recorded. And also, I wanted to take a brief moment while everyone's getting settled in for today's wonderful training to share with you some information about us, about the Governor's Office of Federal Assistance. So the Governor's Office of Federal Assistance, we were created with the passage of Assembly Bill 445 in the last legislative session in 2021. And our vision is to support our stakeholders, which are all of you attending today, in obtaining, increasing, and maximizing federal assistance. And also our mission is to reduce those barriers by providing inclusive, collaborative, comprehensive, and centralized support in obtaining federal dollars here in Nevada. Okay, so next, just some general housekeeping. So again, welcome to everybody that is here. Please note that, like I said, our training will be recorded and we will also stop it during the Q&A. And then also, just so you know, the training that we are recording and all of the resources, the PowerPoints, we'll be putting it up on our website, as well as sending it out to all of those that registered to attend. So you will be getting the materials sent right to you if you want to rewatch the training or, get the summary of the Q&A. And then also, if you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat box. We are monitoring our chat, the chat and the questions. And today we've left some time at the end of our training to answer some of those questions. And then also note that closed captioning is available. So please click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. So just to make sure that you know that you're in the right place, which we're so glad that you're here. So today we will be introducing you to keywords and concepts for the upcoming 2024 Post-Award Training Series. And today's presentation is brought to you by some amazing trainees, our Executive Grant Analysts, Sandy Wallace and Mayita Sanchez. And today we are hoping that they are going, by the end of this training, you're going to have an understanding of the key concepts in the post-award grant management, as well as the knowledge of keywords and definitions in post-award federal grant management. So right now, to kick us off, we're going to have Sandy. She's going to go ahead and start.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to have you here. So this year we're going to be talking about post-award management, grant management, and we're just to refresh your memory, there's 5 steps to the grants management cycle. The pre-award is where you do the grant research, opportunity research, and then you find a grant opportunity and you submit the grant application, and then you get the award, and then the post-award period begins. And the post-award includes monitoring and reporting, making sure that you have your single audit if that's required, and then the grant closeout system. Next slide. So when you get a grant, the first steps that I recommend is that you bring your team together, your grant team together. And this is the same team usually that helped you write the grant. So it includes people who are like the program director or principal investigator of the grant, such as the grant writer or the program manager, probably someone from your finance office, someone from your human resources office. It's always a good idea to bring those people back together again once you get the grant. And then you're going to have several documents that you're wanting to gather. So you want to have a copy of your grant application, and in your grant application, you want to particularly pull the scope of work or your grant goals, objectives, and activities, as well as your budget. Then you want to have a copy of the notice of grant award, and you want to bring those things together to this grant implementation meeting. And depending how complex your organization is, this might be a big team, and you might have to break it up into a project management meeting versus a budget review meeting. Whatever works best for you, whether you're a small nonprofit, a tribal government, a local or city or county government, or a state agency, these steps are pretty much the same. You're wanting to review what you said you were going to do, check in with everyone that everything is still current, that no changes are going to be needed to be made, and that everyone on your team is on the same page and understands what the grant is about, what the activities are, and what the budget and the steps to accomplish the grant are. So let's go to the next slide. So the notice of grant award, one of the things I want to say right off the bat that I always say to everyone, there really is no shortcut to reading, unfortunately. But the good news about that no shortcut to reading is that once you see a few grant awards and a few grant applications and a few notices of funding opportunity, once you learn these kind of acronyms and you read through the process, you're going to have a better idea of what's included, because they're always usually they follow the same format. So once you kind of force yourself to deep dive and read all this information, it's going to get easier the more you do it. So that's the good news. So a notice of grant award usually has the following information. It has your recipient name, and you want to make sure that your name is the same as it says in the recipient UEI, the unique entity identifier, and we'll describe that as we further down the road. So it'll have your unique federal award identification number, your federal award date, the date of your grant award, your period of performance, which is the start and end date. So say you have a 5-year grant, that would be your period of performance. Then your budget period, if it's a multi-year grant, your budget period is usually for one of those years within the grant. So your first budget period, your second budget period. So your period of performance and your budget period may be different, depending on whether if it's a multiple year grant or if it's a 1-year grant. The amount of your federal award, what your cost sharing or matching amount is, if it's applicable, your approved budget, a description of your project, the name of the awarding agency and their contact information, the assistance listings number and title, whether the award is for research and development, and what your indirect cost rate amount is, or de minimis if you don't have a cost rate agreement. So some of the keywords and key concepts that we'd like you to pay attention to and understand what they are is the UEI, which is a 12-character number that's assigned when you register for SAM.gov. So your UEI is going to be the same for all the federal grant applications and awards that you apply for. Your Federal Award Identification Number, or FAIN, is a code that the different federal agencies assign to a specific financial assistance award or a specific grant award. So those numbers will change each time depending on the grant that it refers to. Your cost sharing and match, that's the portion of the project or program costs that you pay, or you find another source that's not federal funds that pay, that contributes to the budget of the grant. And that's more information about that is in the Uniform Grant Guidance. Your indirect costs, so what the definition of indirect costs are, they are costs that you have as an organization that aren't readily assignable to a particular project, but they're necessary in order for your organization to operate. So for example, you can't really take the executive director's salary and put a little bit into every single little grant and then track that. That'd be a lot of accounting and time management in your finance office. So one of the things that you can do as an organization is you can create or develop and then get approval for an indirect cost rate agreement. And this would include costs like your human resources, your finance department, your administration, people that are involved, and expenses that are involved in managing a grant. And then you get like a percentage that you apply to the grant. So Once you have an indirect cost rate, your rate would be something like 10% or 25%. It depends on your specific organization. If you don't have an indirect cost rate agreement that's through your biggest federal funder, that's called your cognizant federal agency. If you don't have one of those, you can use what's called a de minimis rate, which is 10% of the direct costs. So that's always an option. Your project period, again, this is the period of the entire grant project. So it could be a year, it could be 5 years. Can you go back? I'm sorry. Then your budget period again is usually an annual period. So if you have a multi-year grant, you're going to have a budget period for each one of those years. Next. Okay, so what is your single point of contact? On the standard form 424, which is the application for federal assistance, there's a little box, and that box is about halfway down the page, the form, and it asks you if this grant is subject to what's called intergovernmental review. And it'll say in the notice of funding opportunity whether you're required to have an intergovernmental review. A lot of times you are, sometimes you're not. Sometimes if you're a tribe, you're not. Tribes are often exempt from intergovernmental review. It depends on what kind of agency you are and what kind of federal grant you're applying for. So if you are subject to intergovernmental review, what that means is that you have to notify your state's single point of contact, or SPOC. So Happy Day, OFA, our office, the Office of Federal Assistant, is the SPOC for the state of Nevada. So you are required, if it says you are required, you need to turn a form into us before you submit your grant application. Then if you're a state agency, you have other requirements per Nevada revised statutes and executive order. So state agencies are required to submit the following information to our office. You have to submit a copy of your notice of application, any changes to an existing grant award, the notification of closeout for all your grant awards, and the notification, if any, of unexpended funds at the end of the grant period of performance. So everyone, regardless of if you're a nonprofit, a tribe, a city or local government or county government, or a state agency, can do this notification by accessing our federal assistance notification form, which is on our website. So this is something that you want to do. If you're not a state agency, you want to do this before you submit your grant application. Then our office will give you a number that you can put in that box on the SF 424 financial application or federal application form. And if you're a state agency, you use this form for giving us all that information that's listed on this slide. Next. So this is the definition of intergovernmental review. It's through a federal executive order, and it's issued to foster partnership between the state and the federal government. So it's letting the state know of what all the stakeholders in the state are doing regarding federal grant applications. So for state agencies, we have some notifications and we have budget authority, and Maida is going to talk more about this. We work very closely as state agencies with the Governor's Finance Office, with the Legislative Council's Fiscal Analysis Division, the Controller's Office. The budget authority that governs state agencies involves steps that include work program requests, the interim finance committee review, and then a job number maintenance form. And Maida is going to talk a little bit more about this. The state agency process we're going to give an overview of that. This is also applicable if you're an organization such as a nonprofit or a tribe who's receiving sub-grants from a state agency. This information will be helpful for you. Maida?
Thank you very much so. That was great. And exactly like Sandy said, not going to go too much into the weeds and a lot of this stuff. There are some previous presentations that do go into the weeds on some of these reporting requirements for state agencies. So please feel free to pop into one of those trainings to take a look, or as questions come up, please pop them into the chat. But just going to do a quick little overview just for sake of understanding keywords and some key concepts, so we're better prepared to really do some deep dives into the future trainings as we round out the year. So the Governor's Finance Office, we all call it the GFO for the most part. That is where we do our work programs. So once you receive your federal award, in this post-award phase, you want to submit your proper documentation to do a work program. A work program is simply used to request changes to a legislatively approved budget or to establish your budget account, your BA, for a non-executive budget account. So you're basically putting a little tag and identifier on those federal funds that are coming into the state. It identifies those proposed sources or funds to be received by the agency. And then part of that work program is showing that justification, like, hey, we have a plan for spending this money after it has been awarded. Some other state reporting, Legislative Counsel Bureau through the Fiscal Analysis Division. So LCB provides professional independent review and analysis of budgetary and fiscal matters to the Nevada State Legislature. LCB is considered nonpartisan. If you visit their website, you will see that link there, but it is the same. Once an award is accepted, a federal award is accepted by a state agency, that needs to be reported over to the Legislative Counsel Bureau, and they track that information. And that includes that notice of a grant award once you do receive that information from that. LCB also supports the Interim Finance Committee. So the Interim Finance Committee, or IFC, functions again with LCB. They review those state agency requests to accept certain gifts and grants. So there are caps. So whether or not you have to go to IFC is determined by the amount or the award that you do receive. They review any modifications, any amendments or changes. Let's say you have a certain award, you went to IFC, you had that approved, and then maybe now you've received more money, then you'll have to go back to IFC and be like, hey, there was an amendment made to our budget. So they do review those modifications. You can always find information on the LCB website. For my state agencies that are on the call, please establish that open line of communication with your budget analyst and your ASO, your administrative services officer, to make sure that you understand these processes, know when to go or when not to go. It's always great news when they tell you you don't have to do it. Yes, establish that line of communication always with your team. Some other state agencies, Controller's Office. So our Controller's Office, always feel free to visit their website. And that is where you do that vendor registration. So whenever we want to do work with a non-state agency, and this is directly to our non-state agencies that are here on the call, you have to be registered with the state as a vendor in order to receive any type of payment from us. So this is done through the Controller's Office. The vendor registration link is there. So you would submit that information. Also, a really great resource for our state agencies. Visiting that website, you do have to be on VPN or logged in directly because it's an intranet website, but they have some great resources, existing accounting policies and procedures to really help us with our financial award management. Some other reporting that is required. And this is not state agency specific, but we do see this quite a bit because we do act as a pass-through entity, is the FFATA. So that is the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act. So this is done through the Federal Subaward Reporting System, FSRS. You can find it online. This Transparency Act requires any information or disclosures concerning entities receiving any federal financial assistance through federal awards, so contract, subcontract, grants, and subgrants, to be reported online for that. So here, I have just a bit of information. So it is subaward specific, the subaward reporting system. There is a reporting timeline online for prime recipients pertaining to their subawards. So it'll give you that breakdown as to when you do. When we do our training further down the road, we will go ahead and do a deep dive into that. But information is made available publicly on that website on USA Spending. Everything that's reported through the FFATA, it records and provides information on the name of the entity receiving an award, the amount of the award, information of the award, including transaction type, the location, the UEI number, compensation, and any other relevant information that is specified within that award. So it is a wealth of information and database for us to not only upload that information, it's required, but also to share out for data purposes. So next slide here, just an overview visual as we do deeper dives further down the road. This is a visual of that grant dollar flow from taxpayer to recipient. You know, what does it look like? So as we move into the bulk of work, really understanding what's next, what is post-award management? And Sandy did just a great job explaining those first pieces of putting your team together. Post-award is really the largest lift. It's the most amount of work that you're going to be doing in the grant management life cycle, right? And having an understanding of how these federal dollars can flow from beginning to end is really helpful as you manage them. And as we see here, you do receive that from the government. And then depending on how you put them to work, you could subaward them, you can contract them, you could further subaward them through a subrecipient. So it's really important to really have an understanding of that. So some keywords and key concepts. So these are great if you want to go through once that slide deck is made available to you. You could print out all these keywords and key concept slides and stick them somewhere so you can remember. Federal award, again, is just that assistance that a non-federal entity receives directly from a federal awarding agency. A federal agency being any agency as defined under 5 USC and further clarified under 5 USC rules. So yes, the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, or CFDA number, that is the number that is assigned to a federal program by the federal government. Once you become familiar with those CFDA numbers, you can kind of see, oh, well, this number pertains to this agency or this, and you can kind of tell what type of federal award belongs to where just based on that CFDA number. Prime recipient, it's an entity, generally a non-federal entity that receives any type of federal award directly from a federal awarding agency. So that's a direct connection between the non-federal and the grantor, the federal agency. Pass-through entity, or PTE. This is also a non-federal entity that provides a subaward to a subrecipient to carry out part of a federal program. So again, looking at that federal grant flow, you have those federal awards that are awarded directly to the prime, and then that prime decides to then further award them down. They now become a PTE, or pass-through entity. A subaward is an award provided by a pass-through entity to a subrecipient for that subrecipient to carry out part of that federal award received by the pass-through entity. So they do quite a bit of programmatic work. Subrecipient, again, is that entity that does receive that subaward and goes into that type of relationship with the pass-through entity. It varies a little bit different from a contractor, and we get this question a lot. What's the difference between a contractor and a subrecipient? And it really is the type of work that they do and the level of involvement that they do have within that programmatic piece of it. Also, our subrecipients inherit, I would say inherit all of those federal rules and whatever additional rules that are state specific down into their sub-award. Internal controls, hopping over to that. This is the process and systems through which an organization really does ensure that it is operating effectively within compliance, right? Accurately handling its finances and accounting, reporting reliable data, and complying with its own policies and procedures, as well as applicable laws and regulations. You'll find that this is the bulk of the work and preparation when receiving and administering federal dollars. You really want to make sure that your internal controls are up to date, that your staff are aware of your internal controls, that expectations are being upheld, and that everyone's trained and on board and knowing what they're doing. So that's really important. So work. You've gotten that federal award, yay. And again, this is where most of the work really happens. It's really important to understand your role in the grant life cycle. Like, okay, we're in the post-award phase. Am I that prime? Am I acting as a pass-through? Am I a contractor acting as a vendor with a contract? Am I acting as that subrecipient receiving those sub-awarding dollars? So it's really important to understand where you sit. You want to prepare and track and monitor everything at the end of the day. You want to retain all of your emails, all of your communication, review retention records. I know that's something that sometimes we kind of miss, like, hey, how long do I need to keep something on file? What does this look like? How long to be in compliance we need to keep this in-house, right? So retain your records, request for reimbursements, all your drawdown requests. Make sure you track all of that information. If you have a phone call and you're trying to clarify something, make sure you put it in writing and you make that communication and you have it somewhere written down and you include it with your grant information. Stay on top of your timelines. How do you know when you need to make a change, right? So just staying on top of what it is that needs to be happening in project management. So do we need to submit an amendment based on, where we're going with our work? Do we need to request a no-cost extension? You could see this happen sometimes where maybe you just need a little bit more time to get some of those programmatic pieces in line, but you don't necessarily need more funding. You just need a little bit more time. Do you need to submit that? Again, communicate, communicate, communicate. It's so important. And I know I say this quite a bit. You want to have those open lines of communication with your federal program officer or your grantor, whoever it is that's awarding you, your pass-through entity. If you're a subrecipient and you're working with those pass-through dollars, you want to make sure that you're reaching out to whoever that principal contact is, and that should be listed in your subaward information. You want to be in contact constantly with your program and fiscal staff. And I know sometimes we see some gaps because program is doing program, and sometimes we don't understand what fiscal is doing, and sometimes fiscal doesn't understand what program is doing. So having meetings every once in a while, monthly, with your program and fiscal staff just to touch base. Where are we? Are we spending funding down in a timely manner? Are we behind? Do we anticipate that we're going to have a shortfall? And just having those touch bases with your team internally and externally with your subrecipients is really, really important because it makes everything else run a little bit smoother. Again, conversations and touch bases with your subrecipients and your contractors, being that place where a contractor or subrecipient can come to you as a pass-through entity and ask for technical assistance, ask for support. It's better to ask and do things right than to not ask and then have something wrong happen and then go back and try to clean that up. So continuously check in and ask, how are we doing? What can we do better? What are our needs? Do we need to pivot? And this all in turn helps you prepare for this continuous monitoring and reporting that happens throughout this post-award phase. You're constantly submitting your requests for reimbursements, right? You're asking for payment for the work that's being completed. You're preparing for your audit to make sure that, there aren't any audit findings, requesting technical assistance, preparing for monitoring if you're a subrecipient, preparing for monitoring if you're passing funds through and making sure that you're communicating with your partners. Hey, we're going to come out, we're going to do a desk review, we're going to come and talk to your staff, see how everything's doing. And then preparing always for closeout. Hey, we're nearing out the end of the grant. We need to make sure that we're collecting all of the information and final reports that need to be submitted to whoever they need to be submitted in a timely manner so we can go ahead and close out this grant. So best practice, create and use your checklists, right? Make sure you're again, checking in and always reassessing. Self-assessments are really important to see where your team is at and make changes as changes need to happen because, everything doesn't always go as planned. Even though we plan it really, really well, there's always something that happens that throws us off just a little bit. So just some keywords and key concepts again. You'll hear the term RFR thrown around. It's a request for reimbursement. So that's simply just that request submitting federal funds, like, hey, we've done this work, here's our RFR. Drawdown request, you hear that as well. Usually it's done from that prime to Fed. So that payment request, it can sometimes be referred to as a voucher. In state, we do refer to it as that as well. Sometimes it's done through an automated system. So make sure you read through your notice of grant award or sub-award to understand how to submit these RFRs and drawdown requests so that you're able to get your funding to pay for the work that's happening. Federal Program Officer, FPO, usually responsible for reviewing progress reports received from the grant recipients, and they're designated to each grant. So that's your point of contact for questions. So I always think it's great to have a positive relationship with your FPO if you can, so you can reach out and ask them a question. You want to make a change? Do we need to make an amendment? What do you think? Help? Because at the end of the day, they want to make sure that those federal funds are being spent well and that work is happening. So this is always kind of like the uh-oh stuff. So compliance rules and regulations. So please, again, I don't want to go into the weeds about anything because we'll be doing some deep dives, but just an overall understanding. SAM, we've talked about SAM.gov. This is the system for award management. It provides you with your UEI numbers. Those who are familiar with SAM and have worked in SAM and have had to renew UEI numbers or request a UEI number know that it can be a very long, drawn out process. So make sure you build in time always to go into SAM to make sure that you're renewed, make sure that you're current, make sure that your information is there. If anybody needs any support with any of that, please reach out to our team. We're more than happy to help. Code of Federal Regulations, 2 CFR 200. We always hear people talking about, oh, just look at 2 CFR. 2 CFR will give you the answers to everything. It's a very big document. And so uniform guidance, it's also referred to as uniform guidance, or that super circular. It's the official codified and legal publication of permanent rules by the departments and agencies of the federal government. So again, it's really important to be familiar with it. You don't have to know it back and forth, but being able to at least be able to go into it and look for and do research to identify the information that you may or may not need to make sure that you are in compliance with your federal grants is really important. The Office of Management and Budget Circulars, OMB, we talk about OMB all the time. It's tools by the Executive Office of the President to exercise managerial and policy direction of federal agencies. So again, all just a wealth of information where they house everything so that it lives in one place. Our compliance supplement, preparing for an audit, also a very important tool. It's used by auditors when performing audits, and it can support you, our organizations here, to prepare for an audit. So being familiar with that as well. The Federal Audit Clearinghouse, or FAC, it's used to distribute the single audit reporting packages to federal agencies. Our state administrative manual, our SAM in-state, not SAM.gov, SAM 3000, it's specific to federal grant procedures. If you're not familiar, definitely take a look at that. It breaks down a lot of these processes, and they have the in-state policies and procedures or guidelines. NRS, we refer to quite a bit, is the Nevada Revised Statutes. That's a layer of restriction in addition to our federal rules. So it's always that Russian nesting doll. We have our federal, and then we have our NRS, and then we have our SAM. So we have to make sure that we follow the most restrictive when funding. And this is specific as well, not specific, but this applies to our non-state agencies as well, local law, local government. And then even further down within your organizations, if you have more restrictive, you have to follow the more restrictive layer of law there when it comes to managing your federal dollars. Just another couple of resources. You have the Nevada Grant Manual found on our website, and then of course our Nevada Policy and Procedures Manual, which is also state specific, but it's very helpful to everyone just to kind of see how you can set up those policies and procedures in-house to really be able to administer your federal dollars effectively. So part of your post-award, again, is understanding risk, right? And understanding risk, and I usually come at it at a lens of subawarding. You receive your federal dollars, now you're passing through. We have to understand risk. It's an important step in award determination as it informs monitoring, right? And if you have a higher risk sub-recipient, it's going to require more monitoring. So a high risk requires more monitoring. Moderate risk can be monitored to review for changes in level of risk, but doesn't require as much. Low risk, hey, these people know what they're doing. They require a little less monitoring, but always looking for those changes. Maybe they were low risk, maybe something happened and now they've moved up and now they're a high risk subrecipient. So these can change, but it does affect your monitoring, and it helps you plan, like, okay, how often are we going to have to come in and again touch base with this person? Is it going to have to be monthly? Is it going to have to be quarterly? Is it yearly? What does that look like? So federal awardee performance and integration information systems, as any contractor, including a subrecipient, this is that list that you have to check. You have to check for department to see if they're eligible to receive federal funds. So part of your risk assessment and your risk monitoring is making sure that anybody who receives any federal dollars or state dollars is checked against this database to make sure that they aren't already in trouble per se, because if they are, you can't give them federal dollars. And so this needs to be part of that check process for that. Part of our post award, all that wonderful reporting and monitoring. So reporting, can include or does include your fiscal and program reporting. They could be one and the same. They could be done together. They could be done separately. And then as well as your financial and program reporting to your grantor, right? So financial reporting are those expenses paid for federal funds, whatever that looks like. And that comes back to our RFR, or maybe you have to log into your system, payment management system, to do reporting. Program reporting, progress being made towards deliverables. That's what that looks like. Timing, again, can vary. It could be monthly, quarterly, yearly. It's done at closeout. Always take a look at your notice of grant award to understand what reporting is required, when it's required, and how to submit that reporting and to who. Become familiar with your payment management systems. And make sure that your login information is there and available so that you're able to go in and request those drawdowns. Again, that UEI number is so important. So make sure your UEI number information is correct. Make sure when you read your notice of grant award that whoever they're awarding those federal funds to, your name and your UEI number are correct, because that's going to impact your ability to be able to get your funds to pay for your program. If they're incorrect, you want to make sure that you point that out right away so that gets fixed upfront, so you're not having trouble down the road trying to get funding reimbursed for that work. So again, review your notice of award for instructions as to how to submit and when to submit required reporting. So part of your post-award, again, is keeping track of where you're at, where you're going, and how the work is being done, right? So in doing this, you'll be able to anticipate whether or not you need to make a change, when to pivot. So if you've been monitoring your work and the work of your subrecipients and your contractors, you can see that funds are maybe not being expended as originally planned, right? They're not being expended fast enough. It's slow going. And so you'll have an understanding as to why maybe they're not being spent within that planned time frame. So it's important to anticipate needs, to make sure that you're submitting the proper information or reporting to your grantor to make those changes. Do we need an amendment? Is the scope of work funky and we need to change the timing? Or do we maybe need to move funds from here to there, depending on what that looks like? Maybe a contract needs to be canceled, or maybe a partnership needs to be canceled because maybe we found that, they are no longer able to, or don't have the capacity to hit those numbers, those outcomes that we had originally planned. So it's really important to anticipate these needs. Remember, the grantor always wants you to succeed at the work that you're doing, so you need to communicate, request that technical assistance, be ready to submit the information that needs to be submitted so that changes can happen when changes need to happen. So keywords and concepts from just here: risk assessment, a systematic process of evaluation to evaluate those potential risks that may be involved in awarding a grant. Amendment, a formal request that must be submitted to change the scope or objective for federally supported projects. And then a no-cost extension is just that, an extension of time to a project period or budget period to complete the work of a grant without additional federal funds. So next, single audit. So single audit to me is always very intimidating. So single audit and cash management reporting activities include preparation of the U.S. Treasury Agreement, preparation of a memorandum of agreements, providing single audit training to state agencies, preparation of the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, compilation prior year audit findings, and preparation of Cash Management Improvement Act annual report. So keep in mind, all the work that you're doing all the time is needs to be on par, right? So having your internal controls, your policies and procedures, checking in with your team, making sure everyone's trained, knows what's happening, understanding your notice of grant award, what's your expectations. All of this helps you prepare for these single audit and federal grant reporting that needs to be done. So to ensure that the state of Nevada remains in compliance with the Single Audit Act, each state agency that receives federal funds, they are required to submit their single audit certification form. So instructions for that form can be found online. It's an aggregate, so the figures accumulated from these forms are used or incorporated into the SEFA, the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards, which becomes part of the single audit report reviewed by our outside auditors here at the state. So it's important that you submit this information, pop in, take a look at those outlines. For my non-state agencies, so when you receive funds from a state agency, they should ask you whether or not you are required to complete a single audit. That single audit cap is $750,000 federal dollars in a year, right? So if you spend less than that, you're exempt from that single audit. But if you spend more than that, you're going to have to go through that process of conducting a single audit. It's not done internally. You need to go out and find a certified public accountant to come in and do that single audit for your organization. If you have any questions about that, and again, we'll dig into it in a few months. So come to that training, pin it, but we'll dig into it and provide some best practices, some ideas, and training as to how to go about that process. But just a very high overview of that. So you've gone through this, and this also pertains to monitoring. Monitoring's being done. Hey, we found something's not right. What do I do? Oh no, help. So what do you do if there is any type of findings when conducting an audit? You want to review those findings, really understand them. Again, like Sandy said, you have to read everything. There is no shortcut to reading. Review those and respond in a timely and detailed manner. You really want to communicate, and you want to provide as much detail as you want, or need, in order to really communicate, hey, we're finding resolution. These are the steps that we're taking. This is when we're doing it. This is how we're doing it. You want to develop your corrective action plan, sometimes called a CAP. This step-by-step plan of action is needed to close that audit finding, and it provides you that map, that guideline, that guidance as to how we're going to go from here to resolve this audit finding. Review your internal controls, train your team, document, again, everything, and always ask for help. Our folks are here for technical assistance, but your federal program officer is there for technical assistance. Your pass-through, whoever you're receiving funds from, if you're a subrecipient, is there to provide you technical assistance. And a lot of individuals have so much information. There's too much information, so much information to help guide you through some of these these audit findings. So that is very, very helpful. So keywords and key concepts that we've kind of gone through, and to help prep you for our future trainings, uniform guidance. Again, those uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements are federal awards. But go through 2 CFR, be familiar with 2 CFR. GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, is what that stands for. It's widely used for financial reporting. Also something that does not hurt to be familiar with and incorporated into your federal award management. General ledger, a GL, a record of all assets, liabilities, expenses, income, and equity. So making sure you have that GL, it's clean, it's up to date. People are all looped in and using that. CAP, or corrective action plan, a narrative of steps to identify how and when actions will be taken to correct errors found or find resolution. I find sometimes we get CAP'd, the corrective action plan, mixed up with the cost. What is it? Cost. Oh my gosh, it just left me. For indirect cost, the cost allocation plans. So you'll hear people use CAP for both cost allocation and corrective action. So when someone says CAP, depending on context, sometimes it doesn't hurt to ask for clarification. So last in your post-award phase, you've gone through all this. Whew. So closing out, again, know your responsibilities. Where do you live in closeout world? Are you the prime recipient or are you the subrecipient? Compliance, this pulls into compliance. How much timing do we need, to get those final reports, financial and programmatic, from our subrecipients, as well as when do I need to submit as a prime recipient? Do I need to request an extension if applicable? Again, knowing when to pivot. Reasons for closeout can be your period of performance has ended, right? You're completed your project. Yay, subrecipients have completed their project. There might be a non-compliance issue and we need to do a closeout at that particular subaward. Or maybe there's just a mutual agreement like, hey, we're going to go ahead and terminate this award. So always take a look again at 2 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, to guide in that closeout process, and always look at your notice of grant award as well for support and closeout. Helpful tips, again, be organized, document and track, read, ask questions, ask for help. So that is it. I want to give enough time for Q&A. So just here quickly, series kickoff. This is what this was, what to expect in 2024. January, it says the Post-Grant Award Management Series kickoff, understanding keywords and key concepts. February, we're looking at compliance and regulatory guidelines. So we'll really dig into those couple of slides where we talked about that. March, we'll talk about post-award financial management. So learning about financial management in much more detail. April, programmatic management and implementation of your award. So looking at those programmatic pieces. May, risk management. So really understanding and digging into that for the assessments. And then June, we'll go ahead and tackle subrecipient monitoring and management. And that's only the first 6 months. So we'll let you know what's coming up in the following 6 months. So as a reminder, OFA provides a variety of grant-related resources to everyone here on this call and everyone who is not on this call, stakeholders statewide. We do have the Notice of Funding Opportunity and database, so please feel free to visit if you're doing grant discovery, you're looking for grant opportunities. We provide free technical assistance. Please just reach out to us directly at our grants email inbox, and one of our analysts will be assigned to you and will reach out to you and touch base with you to see how we can help you. We also have our Nevada Grant Manual that was updated recently. We have wonderful emails of curated grants that go out to your inbox if you sign up. So those are weekly and Nevada specific. So please, if you would like to be part of that mail list, please reach out to us. Federal Grant Discovery Tool, my baby. So we do have a USDR Nevada Federal Grant Identification Tool that provides a little bit easier navigation of grants.gov so that you're able to discover federal grants. And it's also a great opportunity to network and collaborate with stakeholders statewide who are also part of that tool to kind of see who's working on what, who's looking at what, and where there might be a potential opportunity to meet and connect and apply for a federal grant application. And as always, you want to hear more from us, best way to keep in contact with us is to sign up for our OFA newsletter so you don't miss anything. So at this point, I believe we are at Q&A, and I'm going to leave this link up here. Please, if you have a moment to fill out a survey with feedback, we would love to hear from you.